Hey, I'm so excited you're here. I just finished having a conversation with Tom LeNoble, a remarkable human being. I cannot wait for you to listen to this episode. I found him through his book, My Life in Business Suits, Hospital Gowns, and High Heels. This is a memoir, and this isn't even his whole life. We're just getting started. He has had such a remarkable experience with life, death, loss, grief, showing up for everything. And this is one of those episodes I know is going to be transformative for people because we are talking to someone who has been told they are going to die many times in their life, and they have been by the bedside of many people who have died. So there's a lot in there for those of us who are living. And I'm just really grateful for someone who has such a colorful and experienced life that they were able to find the time to be with us today. So I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're going to hear this conversation, and I'd love to know what you think of it. Here we go.
Hi. Geez,
Hi!
a little drama to start here, right?
I love it. Um, I'm so grateful to have this time with you. I picked your book up the end of the year and I read it straight through New Year's Eve and day, I think it was. And so it sort of felt like I spent the weekend with you, but you have no idea who I am.
You know,
And
I hear that from a lot of people. They picked it up and they can't put it down, or I hear they laughed, they cried, they did both at once. But my favorite is people will call me or reach out
yeah,
and they'll go, I'm at da 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 da. And I'm like, oh, they're in the book and I'm there. I'm with them in the book someplace. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not there. It's like a moment. And
right?
thank you for reading my book.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for writing the book. I'm so curious about the experience for you, like sitting with all of that, because that's decades of your life that you sat down and you got into. But before we get into that, I always love to ask somebody if they are open to sharing their first memory of death. When you came to
Sure.
realize
Sure,
death
sure,
was a part
sure.
of our life. Yeah, what was it for you?
You can ask me anything. I am very spontaneous. I'm a very private person, but after writing that book, you can ask me anything. The thing you don't know is that book ended probably 15 years ago, so it doesn't have the next 15 years. That's coming in another book.
Okay,
There
great.
are two more books coming. My first experience of knowing there was something about death that was interesting is I was very, very sick, and my grandmother appeared before me. She walked down the hall and literally was there before me. This was the same grandmother when I was about 9 or 10 who shared with me about an experience she had of being in a garden and knowing she had never been there before, but knowing she had been there before. I was very young, and it was probably my introduction to, the afterlife reincarnation. But this same grandmother who was an angel, and she was standing there looking at me. I was very, very sick and gonna die. And she looked at me and she said, do you want to stay here or do you want to come with me? It's your choice. And I said, I want to stay here. I have stuff to do. And she was gone.
Wow, I just got like full body goosebumps. That's incredible. Wow, what a moving moment that I'm sure, I mean, it stuck with you your whole life. You have been through a lot of, threads of life and death. And it's interesting because I found you through a podcast that had nothing to do with death. It was Debbie's podcast. You were talking about vision boards and manifesting. And I was like, this person seems cool. Looked you up on Instagram and you had posted something like the day before about grief. And I was like, okay, because my thing is all about death and loss and grief. So did a little more digging. Oh, you've got a book, got the book. And then not even thinking this book's going to be about death. It was this common thread in the book. But did you feel that way, or was it strange to have someone reach out and say, hey, let's talk about death because of your book?
Well, I think when you've been given 6 months to live three times, when you've had two life-threatening illnesses, one told you were told was terminal, and I've lived with metastatic cancer now for 14 years, your relationship with death shifts. And I probably had the good fortune, or I think of it that way, and the honor. I was with many people when they died, including my brother, my mother, and my father. In fact, you could have called me a death doula before we had death doulas. And then my own experience is that I have no fear of death. In fact, I don't want to go right now, but I've really had an amazing life. And if that's what was going to happen, then that's what happens. And I think in being given 6 months to live, uh, three times, especially the last time I remember, I was with some doctors and they said, we can't do anything else for you. And you need to prepare a discussion. And I laughed. Now, if you want to shake up a few doctors, laugh when they tell you have 6 months to live. But you see, I knew something then. I knew that if I was going to die, what I was going to do with that time and what I would try and make out of it and what learning I could get from it and what could I share during that time period. But I also knew something else that I had already demonstrated to myself that that always didn't mean what looked like on the surface.
Yeah, absolutely. So, correct me if I have any facts incorrect, but I think it was 30, you were 35 years old
I
when you,
was, I
yeah. So can you
was.
talk a little bit about that, what you were told, what you thought that meant for you,
Yeah,
and yeah,
it's a
also what was
great,
going on at the time in the world?
yeah, it's a really great question, Jenna, because I think in my brain, I'm still stuck at 35. I think of myself as 35, and I didn't realize when I said that till recently of those two things were in parallel. But I remember my brother died of AIDS in 1985, and here in San Francisco at the famous Ward 86, and I got tested about in 1989, and I came out of this anonymous testing center, and I had been with a woman and her trainee, and they were giving me the result, and they were doing all this kind of what it felt like a song and dance routine. That I finally said, "What's the answer? What do you think the answer is?" And I thought, "I think I'm probably positive." She goes, "You are," and I said, "Thank you," and I started to get up and leave, and they said, you can't leave yet. We have to talk to you. And I said, "No, I'll be fine." And I remember going to the car and sitting down in the car, taking the rearview mirror and pointing at myself and talking to the virus and saying, "If you want to come join my party, welcome. If you think you're going to take me out, it's going to be the fight of your life." And I went back to work. Well, about 3 weeks later, I was sitting in the doctor's office who said to me again, "Maybe you didn't hear me, but you're going to die. Would you rather be at your desk or not?" And I remember hearing that, and I finally like I have to make a really hard decision to leave this job and position that I really loved. And um, there was a kind of a knowing to me that in the space of that, there was still something to do.
Mm.
And so while I stopped working and went on disability, I didn't stop working. Myself, along with five other guys, opened the DC Buyers Club, kind of like the Dallas Buyers Club, a little less Hollywood, probably the same number of hookers. But we had in the front room information, and people would come in and even get a hug when nobody else would at that time because there was nothing else. But once we got to know you in the back room, we had imported stuff, smuggled stuff, we were injecting stuff. We had no idea what it would even do to us. But what we knew is in that time, there was nothing and no one coming to the rescue. And so we had ourselves to rely on. So it was an interesting part of life. And what I love about this story is of the six of us, not one of us died from AIDS.
Wow. And I want to say for people who are listening right now, in the 80s, AIDS, HIV, it was a death sentence, right? There was no survival of this. You mentioned, when your brother was in the ward, that no one came out of there alive. You went there and you died. Can you paint a picture for some of us who maybe weren't around then or didn't have the awareness of
Yes,
really what it's
yes. It
like?
was, I remember getting a phone call And my brother called me and he said that I had been in the medical field before. And he goes, I just was at the doctor and they think I have bronchitis. And I wanted to know what you thought. And I remember in that moment in my brain, I went, San Francisco. It wasn't even called AIDS at the time, it was still ARC. But I thought about that disease and I remember my heart kind of fell a little bit. Well, a couple of days later, his best friend called and said, Your brother's in the hospital. I think you should come here. And I didn't have any money. I had to borrow the money to take the flight. And I got to San Francisco, made my way to the hospital. And as I walked in, it felt like I was in that episode of Gone with the Wind after the war goes through and there's like smoke coming up. That's what it felt like. I was in this like disaster zone of death, yet there was so much love present that it was palpable. There were people like Rita Rocket and other people that were there bringing cheer or brownies or whatever that was there at the same time. But you're correct. Nobody walked out. And I went to my brother and we reconnected and had this, great time with each other. And he was ended up with pneumocystis pneumonia, and he was allergic to the sulfa drug, and they couldn't keep him on it. And I made the most difficult call of my life to my mother and father of their small town thinking to say, "Your son is gay, and he's dying of AIDS. You need to come here."
Yeah.
And they came and it was extraordinary. You'll read about that in chapter 9, Bubby. But one of the most beautiful things for me when that experience was my mother and my father, I was in the bed as they took their last breath. And that scene is amazing. But the night before, this nurse came to me and said, I'd like to talk to you for a few moments. And I said, sure. And she pulled me outside and she goes, I'm not going to see you again, and I have something I want to share with you. And I said, oh, are you going on vacation? She goes, no, your brother's going to die. And I remember my initial reaction was almost like, who do you think you are? How do you know it? She goes, I've seen enough. I know it. I'm not going to see you again, but I need you to know something. If I ever had a brother, I'd want him to be just like you. What an amazing thing in this place of what was going on there.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a scene that was not a lot of hope, a lot of people being disowned, for a lack of a better word.
Right.
I came, my parents came, super unlikely in that period of time, did not the norm at all. It was exactly the opposite of when people would get these phone calls and hear what the diagnosis was. You'll read about it, the subsequent, just even finding a funeral home to take the
Yeah.
body was a feat in itself.
Yeah. Even just, your parents, as many other parents, didn't even know your brother was gay, right? So there's this layered sort of experience of your child's going to die and also this identity that had not yet been shared or discussed or accepted in some cases.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a lot of experience being around people in their dying time and or people who have been told they're dying and I'm so grateful. It feels like an honor, especially my parents, right? They brought me into the world and I'm with them as they're exiting the world. But both of them had really amazing circumstances around what happened as they were making that transition.
Yeah. So for those who may right now be at the bedside of their parents or their siblings or loved ones or know that that's coming, can you give any, foreshadow or advice or things that you think are important in that moment?
I think one of the things I learn with clients is how many of us live in the past as if we're going to have a do-over, or like on our phones, when we watch a video, we can press the little button that says go back 10 seconds. Life is not like that. And the magic is in the present. So if you're in that situation, be present with the reality of what's happening because there are going to be things and circumstances that you will remember forever that really are magical and beautiful. And sometimes in the presence of that, it becomes so heavy and grief hasn't even really sunk in yet. but it's just so foreign to us because we're not in touch with it that, it's one guarantee we all have when we're born, we're going to die. So be present with it. I have a keynote I wrote about this that I speak on. It's called Living Fully While Dying. And the first phase for me was living fully without regard to dying. The second phase was living fully being told I was dying. The third phase is living fully realizing I was dying all the time.
Mm.
It's the only thing that we have a guarantee about when we come into this world. And we don't know when it will be. We all have a different amount of time. And to remember today, we woke up. Some people didn't.
Hmm. So what I'm wondering is, you know, so many of us try to avoid that realization, that remembering that we are going to die. You were given some probable chances of why you would die. Do you think that that changes the way that you live and that you show up? Sort of having these, this is a high, I mean, you could still get hit by a bus or something else, knock on wood.
Yes.
But you were sort of given a little peek at this is some of the options that you might know about. Although, any one of us could have those same things going on in our bodies right now. What did the diagnosis itself or putting a name on it, how did that change your relationship with death?
I think the one thing about the bus that's important is when you face dying, no matter what the time period might be, because you're correct, we never know what might happen at any moment. Just read the newspaper. But suddenly the if you're kind of playing with this idea of dying and looking at it, the possibility of that changes a bit. What it does is it makes things that people who you want to share something with, tell them you love them or clean something up, whatever it is, becomes a little more urgent. How we live our days becomes a little different about where our mindset is during the day. I know for me, when it would happen is even from the beginning, it was sort of like, okay, but what am I going to do with that time? That then led into, well, maybe not, maybe not. And as time went on, that became more possible in the presence of, okay, if this does, this is what my mindset is about it. This is what I'll do with it. But what if not? What if that's not the outcome? I think just personally, that possibility that we introduce shifts everything. I've been asked a number of times, Tom, you say you're still here. And, why do you think you're still here? Why do you think after these experiences you're still here? And I like to say a few things. One, I had the best medical care. I had access to the best treatment. I'm privileged. But most importantly, I believed I could.
Mm. Yeah. Do you think that you've let go of things because you are so in touch and in relationship with death? Are there things that you've let go of in your life?
I think it's more of letting go of things that happen in life. It's more of this idea about not living in the past because when I'm there and how much time I'm spending, I'm not here. And here may not last very long once you've had these experiences, which is true for all of us. I have this technique I do now. It's part of my resilience practice, which is a whole nother topic. But I still get the bad lab result or the scan. I've had enough radiation. You could put me in the corner at night and I'd be your nightlight. I glow in the dark. But what happens now when it happens is my reaction is I don't want to discount what I'm feeling. I look at my phone, Tom, you have 30 minutes. Stomp on the floor, cry, scream at God, whatever it is you want to do, but do it and move on because all the time that you spend there has zero to do with right now and the time you could be spending on, well, what could be different? What are the possibilities? So I think it shifts that greatly. And I think that when you go through these things, that if you allow it, dying becomes a different experience because you do get in touch with this reality that dying is inevitable. And it's not about the dying, it's not about your life. It's like, what are you doing with this time? That everybody gets the same thing. We just get shorter, longer, whatever it may be, or how it happens or done. But what's happening with it? What are you doing with it?
Yeah. So you definitely have a why not me can do attitude. You know, you're someone who thinks, well, it's going to be someone, it could be me. Has that been you your entire life, or have some of these things influenced that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jen. I think there's an element of, I think back of me as a little kid. When you read the book you did, I grew up in a shack with no hot water and no refrigerator. And I remember as a little kid, I didn't know the difference because there was a whole lot of love around. And I went to school when I was 5. I was young, and I remember after a few weeks of my little 5-year-old mind coming home, looking around, going, "This doesn't look like what other people are doing. I don't think I belong here, right?" And I think that things happened to me when I was young and even got outrageous that kept thinking about possibility and what might could happen. So I think there was a little bit of that there before, but I think life's experiences, we have a choice of whether we use them to help expand us or not. I have this thing in my practice called terrible gifts.
Okay,
What's
share some
so
more, if
what's a
you will.
What's a terrible gift? Things happen to us or somebody we know. They lose someone they love. A relationship ends. A pet dies. A disaster happens, and God forbid you lose your house. You get sick. Terrible things that happen. You don't wish them on anybody. What I've learned is whether it's a month, a year, or 5 years, there's typically a gift from it. I want to give you the best example I know of a woman I know who was an Olympiad level sports person. Went in for a very simple procedure, got MRSA, had to have her leg cut off. She's sitting in the wheelchair with a walking stick and a cane, thinking about what now and thinking about how ugly these things are. She eventually made her own cane in her own kitchen oven out of acrylic, fashioned the handle around a wine bottle, which I love. This woman today has a global business making the most beautiful canes and walking sticks. So when people are seen with them, they focus on the cane or the walking stick and the beauty of it versus their perceived ability or disability or handicap. This woman got a terrible gift. I think we all get them. If you haven't yet, you likely will in life. It's what are you going to do with that experience? Again, it's reality. It's what happened. Be with it, learn from it, but what comes next is where the magic is.
I love that. Um, It's my podcast, so I can talk about what I want. I'm going to go off the death topic for a moment because I feel like this book also was so much about identity. You know, you finding your identity, you playing with your identity, you having different identities. Could you share for us who Rita is and how she plays into your life? And I'm curious if you think that Rita has different views on death and living and loss, or if she
Oh,
helped in any way to kind of come to those.
Rita's such a different person than me. It's really very comical to me. In fact, when Rita shows up, it's I warn people a little bit. But Rita started. I think I might have been 18, and a couple buddies of mine. There was going to be a talent show at this local bar, and it was a gay bar and had drag shows. And so we decided we were just going to probably over a few beers decided we're going to enter the talent show. Well, I was a theater kid, so we did it, and one of the guys was not successful at all, and we rib him about it to this day. But I got well received. And in my mind, I was back on the stage. I'm a theater kid, so it was all about that. And then I thought, boy, I'm a starving college student. I can make a little money about this, which led to shows 4 nights a week, two shows a night, pageants and all kinds of stuff. And back then, it was an interesting thing because it let me be someone else at a time when I really wasn't really clear who I was. It was clearly an outrageous part of my life. But later in life, Rita was put away. In fact, I love the story. I had decided I had to go really get on with my career, and I had worked in hospitals and during school. In fact, as Rita had really long hair, no eyebrows, people would look at me, and God knows what they were thinking. But I decided to put it away, and I went to Miami, and I was working at a hospital there, and I put Rita in the attic of the house, and then I had moved away from that house, and I forgot about her. And I had this fantasy of always wondering what happened to these people that bought this house and moved in, discovered they had Rita in their attic. But I wish I had some of those dresses today. Some of them were really good. But then Rita went away for a while, and then she showed back up when I moved to San Francisco, but only on Halloween. And she was always a secret, never on the internet until now. But it's definitely a different persona of me. Like Rita is very much, I'm very much around people and bringing everybody in. When Rita comes, there's no competition. She's on her own, and it's a different kind of thing, and it's kind of funny. And I think Rita probably has no concept of what dying might be because Rita is very much in the moment. And Rita knows that eventually the only thing about dying is I'm going to take it all off. And she's not going to be there for a while. So I think her probably thing with dying is don't put me back in the closet so quickly. And I had my book launch party in early December. And when we were designing it, I don't do parties, I do events. There were 90 people there, the media. And I thought, how am I going to do this? Because I'm going to read the book and represent it. So I came up with this idea, and I had this singer, a pretty famous singer, and she sang a song to open it all and then introduced me. And I came in from the back as Rita and came to the stage. Nobody, most people there might have been a handful of people that knew anything about her except the book. And there she was, and she still was looking pretty hot. And then I had 14, I did a couple numbers, and I had 14 minutes to disappear while somebody sang again and reappear in a business suit. And I can remember I did the costume change behind a screen on stage, and I'm like, yeah, I still got this theater stuff. I still got this ability to wow this audience. And I remember when I went backstage to take it off to come back in a business suit, as I went to take it off, it was like Rita was like saying, not yet, not yet, why do we have to not play anymore? You took all this time to get me here. So I think she has that experience. Certainly. What a wonderful question. Thank you for asking it.
Just so much life in there. Um, what wisdom do you have for us, those who are living and maybe haven't been in touch with our own mortality yet?
Well, the first thing I've already said it, one of the most important things is don't live in the past. Do what you can do to be in the present. Take your time with it, learn from it, but get here because you're not going to change it. It's not going to be a do-over. Don't get too far in the future. There's things we have to do. The lights have to be on, food's got to be in the refrigerator, the kids have to be taken care of, gas in the car, whatever it might be for you. But don't get too far ahead because, as I said, we woke up today, some people didn't. So be really, really, really present in what's happening. And I encourage people, especially those that are really, really afraid of it. We know those people that can't even talk about it, to do something to allow them to get in touch with the reality of life that is truer than anything else that happens in life. And that is, you are born and one day you will die. When you get in touch with that, you become much smarter about understanding how to live this life more fully.
Mm. So beautiful. What do you hope people get from reading your book?
I wrote this book. It's a memoir, crosses over into self-help. And I wrote this book so the reader would see that who you are today is the sum parts of who you've always been, all the different ones. Some of them you may want to keep private. They were outrageous. You might even feel shame for them, or they were outrageous. But no matter what, you would not be who you are today without all those parts. So why not embrace them and let them be part of the story of who you are and who you're becoming?
I love that. Do you think that some of the stories were easier to share because certain people have died already?
I had this rule when I did it, Jen. It's a great question. I was like wrestling about using people's real names and what that would be like. And so I decided if you were dead, your name got used. Your name got used.
Yeah.
If you were alive, you got a choice. And then there were a few people it didn't matter that you're going to get your name. But I had this great experience of my two best friends, one I've known for 50 years, the other 48, came to me and said, "What secrets can you have we don't know? We've known you all this time." And I said, "I have enough secrets that I changed your names without even asking you because I didn't want to let people know what you were part of this outrageous thing that was going on at the time." So that was really fun about the experience of how people got exposed in the book. But it's been an interesting thing. It was one of those friends called me the night before the book launch. I was in LA because I was on KTLA the next morning on the morning show. And she said to me, "How are you feeling about sharing all this?" And I'm like, "You're like a little late, aren't you? If you're going to ask me this question, you might have asked me a few months ago, where, the book is launching tomorrow." And we had a good laugh over that. But I have to tell you, it's been extraordinarily liberating. And what has really been meaningful is other people who have shown up and said to me that you inspired me to think about these things and think about who I am and claiming who I am and the things that have happened to me and finding myself on this journey of life, which has been so meaningful. So, it's been really quite rewarding, and it was a real risk because, like I said, I'm a really private man, and I dream about sometimes that you can tell some of the places where I've worked, some Fortune 500, I was sick the whole time. Well, these people wouldn't have hired me to executive positions if they'd known I was sick, much less if they'd known about the heels. So I just imagine somebody picks up the book and they're reading it and they're going, "This dude was sick the whole time and high heels, And I'm like, yeah, 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 because I could care less anymore. I used to care a lot.
Yeah, liberating is such a great word because even though I'm not you, when I was reading it, I felt that sense of like, F yeah, say the things, like get it out there and imagining what some people might think when they're reading it. And we have our lives and we live them. And I'm wondering, what do you think a good death would be for you? You've been by the bedside of many people who have died.
Yeah.
You've thought about it yourself. What would be a good death for you?
Well, I know there's two things. There's one thing for sure is I'm one of those people that as I'm taking my last breath, I'll likely hold up a finger and say, "Just a moment. I need to learn something about this." So that's likely to happen. I think the other thing is I have this idea that if I really know, like I really get the choice of knowing, and like, I've got a month or whatever that's inevitable. I want to have time with the people that are close to me individually. So I imagine like a day that we have like, and we celebrate the things we did together, play the music we love together, reminisce, and have our day together. And then um, to each of those people, remind them that I will forever live with them, that they may not be able to touch me, be present with me, but I will always be in their hearts and their minds. And by simply calling on me, I'll be there, whatever that means, because no one can take away our memories. And then when that ends, I will have said goodbye to everybody, and I'm perfectly comfortable if I'm alone and in those final hours.
Wow. Tom, thank you so much for sharing this precious time with me and with all of our listeners today, for taking the time to write a book. That is no easy feat, for living the life that you lived to write that book. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing the next two books and however many else you get out there while you're still here.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to see them. The next one is called My Life at Facebook, The Adult in the Room. When I worked there, I was old enough literally to be everybody's father. Everybody was 20 or 21, had deferred law school, business school, medical school to work at their dream job because it was only in colleges. And I come along and they called me the adult in the room. And then the third book is about my life in toxic soup, about a toxic relationship and toxic cancer treatments that happen after the book you're speaking of.
Wow. Well, I'm going to make sure to put everything in the notes so people can follow along. And yeah, for anyone who's interested, Tom also has some really beautiful morning kind of grounding techniques that he shares, which are wonderful to be a part of too. So thank you so much, Tom.
It's a delight to be with you, Jenna. You're just wonderful. Thank you.
When a guest comes on this show, it says so much about who they are as a person because the invitation to be on this show is a reminder that we are dying. And of course, that's partly the reason I choose these guests because they have a theme or a thread or a story or experiences or wisdom around death. But they also know the preciousness of life. And for them to give of their time to be with us, it means so much because they know there's only so many conversations that they can have before they die. But what I also want to share with you is that you have chosen to be here. There are only so many podcast episodes you can listen to, and you have chosen to be with us today to listen to this conversation with Tom and any other conversations that you've been a part of. And this means so much to me. This podcast is meant to get us to be more conversational around death in order that we live a life that is truly aligned with who we want to be and that we can show up for each other in our moments of distress and challenge and celebration. And so I just want to say an extra thank you for you. This podcast is not just about our guests, it's about us as a collective together. So thank you so much. I look forward to having you in many more episodes and conversations in the future.